A man follows his girlfriend after she dumps him, begging her to listen to his explanation. As he tries to follow her, he suddenly gets dizzy and falls to his knees. While his girlfriend checks on him, he suddenly makes an insane request. The man wants to clap her from behind. The woman obviously refuses at first, but eventually she gets heated up. The two, like stray dogs in heat, makes little puppies in front of a big crowd. Days before this incident, a man, feeling sick and dizzy in a first-person perspective, rushes to the kitchen and tries to alleviate the discomfort by washing his face. He sees a television and turns it on. A man named Ricky Verona, a cartel boss, appears. He shows Chef Chelios, the protagonist and expert assassin, that he has injected poison into him while he slept. Ricky confidently informs him about the poison, stating it will be fatal when Chef's heart rate falls. Enraged, Chef breaks the television, rushes outside without care in his surroundings, and jumps on an expensive car. Too enraged and anxious to care about anything, he heads to his car, drives, and calls his doctor. Someone answers the call, but not his doctor. It appears his doctor is having a good time with some chicks. He hangs up and tries to contact another person. While driving, Chef gets drowsy and dizzy again as the poison acts up in his system. He snaps out of it when his heart experiences an adrenaline rush. He reaches his friend Carlo, also known as Kayla, at night and instructs him to inform if he gains any information about Ricky Verona. Arriving at Orlando's hood, Chef goes straight to find Orlando, points a gun at him, and due to anger and the adrenaline rush, pushes Orlando back to the toilet, pressuring him to reveal Ricky's whereabouts. Orlando insists he knows nothing about Ricky, but Chef stubbornly interrogates him. Orlando's men hear Chef threatening their boss, breach the small door of the toilet, and point their guns at Chef. Orlando tries to calm them, but Chef persists in squeezing information despite multiple guns pointed at him. Orlando then explains he's not affiliated with Ricky, calming Chef. As he calms down, weakness and dizziness return. Trying to solve this, he buys a white Coke from Orlando. Like a madman, Chef lies prone on the ground as he sniffs the white Coke. Orlando asks why he's looking for Ricky. Chef responds by telling him that Ricky hired some Chinese to poison him. After ingesting the white Coke, Chef still feels bad and thinks it's not effective. He realizes the solution to staying alive is to keep his heart rate high, recalling the time when adrenaline kicks in. He concludes that he needs to keep his heart rate high or he will die. So he immediately headbutts one of Orlando's men and gets in a fight with them. After successfully raising his heart rate, he goes to his car and receives a call from Ricky, who angers him more by telling him that he will go to his girlfriend. While driving, the police spot him overspeeding, tailing him and instructing him to pull over. He hangs up at Ricky and finally reaches his doctor, Miles, informing him about the poison and asking for his diagnosis. While they are talking, Chef drives wildly, passing everything without any care. He drives through a mall while Miles is running a checkup on him. After a few questions, Dr. Miles comes to the conclusion that they gave him Beijing cocktail, a poison that can only be contained by a surge of adrenaline glands. In short, Chef must keep moving because the one keeping him alive is adrenaline. If he stops, he dies. After Chef hears this, he crashes in an escalator. He runs towards the fire exit of the mall as the police chase after him. Miles says that he will be in LA after an hour. Chef gets outside the mall and calls for a taxi. When a taxi stops in front of him, he forcefully pulls the passenger outside and rides the taxi. While riding in the passenger seat, Chef notices that he is cooling down, so he tells the taxi driver to max out the music. Like a rock star, Chef bangs his head upside down multiple times to keep the adrenaline pumping. They stop by a mart and Chef tells the taxi driver to wait for him outside as he goes inside the mart. He goes to the cashier, slams him on the floor, points a gun at him, and recklessly gets all the energy drinks as well as the foods that can keep his adrenaline. He returns to the taxi and tells the driver to bring him to Beverly Hills, where his boss is. His boss, Carlito, is having a rodeo time with chicks around him and his men on guard. Carlito dives into the pool and sees Chef underwater. Chef goes straight to the point and asks him about the poison. While talking, Chef notices that Carlito is too calm about the situation. After a few words from his boss, he realizes that Carlito and Ricky are trying to take him down. Instead of bursting out in anger, Chef uses his brain and goes out peacefully from Carlito's mansion. Trying to return to the taxi, Chef faces resistance from the driver, insisting he drives himself before entering. With no time to spare, Chef throws the driver away and carjacks the vehicle. While driving, he receives a call from Miles, who informs him about a drug that can help stabilize the poison. Miles gives careful instructions, emphasizing a moderate intake. After their call, Carlo reaches out, informing Chef that he spots Ricky's brother eating in a diner. Chef immediately drives to the diner, rushing towards Ricky's brother upon arrival without any care. He searches for Ricky's brother, going inside the kitchen. Ricky's brother spots him and pursues. Unaware, Chef plans to ambush him, suddenly appearing and chopping his hand with a butcher's knife. Despite the injury, Ricky's brother charges Chef, overpowering him with his size. Fortunately, Chelios appears, distracting Ricky's brother. With the diversion, Chev seizes the chance and shoots him behind the head. Chev searches his body and finds his phone. He immediately contacts Ricky, who at that time having his other bald head slurped. He gets startled and pushes the woman when he hears Chev's voice coming from his brother's number. Chev spews multiple provoking words and gets in Ricky's head. He gets furious in the loss of his brother and enrages. Afterwards, Chev goes straight to the pharmacy in a hospital in order to get the drug Miles told him. He cuts the line and insists to be prioritized. The pharmacist gets irritated at him and calls the police. While she is away, he spots a nose inhalant that has a drug content he is looking for. The police immediately responds and searches for him. Chev tries to escape, but one of concerned citizens spots him and points his whereabouts. He goes to a room and wears a hospital gown as a disguise. However, his disguise is not enough. The police spot him and recognizes him right away. He runs to the staircase and bumps into a group of nurses rushing a patient towards the operating room. He asks one of the nurses and demands to get him in the medicine basin a drug he needed. The nurse is attending the patient, so he panics when Chev points a gun at him. The police catches up and points a gun at Chev, but they remain on hold because Chev is taking one of the nurses a hostage. All of a sudden, one of the nurses stumbles and all of them follows her as well. Eventually, the nurse finds the drug he is looking for. However, Chev's adrenaline is slowly decreasing and it will be too late before the drug kicks in. He sees a defibrillator and orders one of the nurses to hit him with it. When the elevator opens, the nurse pushes the defibrillator at him and gets him thrown inside the elevator. While inside the elevator, he injects the syringe full of the drug in his arm, neglecting Miles' advice. The effects kick in and Chev becomes high as the Eiffel Tower. While wearing a hospital gown, he runs like a crazy animal in steroid, jumping on top of cars. During his endless sprint, Miles contacts him again to check on him. Chev informs him about what he has done. Hearing that he overdosed, Miles tells him that he has more or less several minutes to live. During his run, he sees a police motorbike. Chev has nothing to lose, so he goes straight at it and eventually rides away from the police who is trying to retrieve his motorbike. He becomes completely nuts, so he tries an acrobatic move while riding the motorbike. Because of this, he crashes towards a restaurant and jumps on the tables. He loses consciousness because of the crash, but shortly after, he snaps out of it when his girlfriend contacts him. Her girlfriend, Eve, who is unaware of his situation, called him because she is just checking in him. Chev then informs her about the situation, but Eve thinks that he is just making fun of her, so she does not believe what he is saying. Chev then asks her location, in which Eve immediately gives. He rides the motorbike again and drives towards Eve's house. Ricky is also coming to capture Eve because he wants to get even to Chev for killing his brother. Chev arrives at Eve's place and she kisses him. Eve still does not know what is Chev's situation, so she calmly sits in her couch. Chev tells his girlfriend again about the situation and added that someone is after her. However, she still thinks that Chev is just playing around, so she disregards the dangers. Eventually, Chev manages to bring her outside. When they are walking outside the house, Chev spots Ricky's men and intentionally drops Eve's things on the ground. While she is picking up her makeups, Chev takes down all of Ricky's men. Afterwards, the two goes to Chinatown for a date. The two goes to a Chinese eatery and dines in with her, where Chev in a serious face reveals her about his situation and about the nature of his work. However, Eve thinks that Chev is just telling her a cover-up story, so she will break up with him. In frustration, Eve walks outside the eatery. Chev tries to tell her that he is saying the truth and follows Eve as she walks out. Unfortunately, the drug's effect wears off, decreasing his adrenaline. He gets on his knees in front of the crowd and gets dizzy again because his heart rate is decreasing. Left with no choice, Chev asks Eve to mate with him like what dogs do in public. Obviously, Eve finds his request crazy and turns him down. He stubbornly makes his way with Eve, desperate with his situation. Miraculously, Eve eventually accepts his persistent request and the two wildly makes love in public. During Chev's climax, he suddenly receives a call from Chelios, who tells him that he finally finds out Ricky's whereabouts and informs him about his location. Upon hearing this, Chev, with his adrenaline pumped out by his lover, leaves her behind and goes straight to Ricky. Eve gets angry at Chev and screams at him as he leaves her in embarrassment. He immediately calls a taxi and rides it. While in the passenger's seat, the taxi driver offers him a drug. He intakes it and gets his system calm without worrying and maintaining his adrenaline. As they arrive, he gives the taxi driver a tip and goes inside the factory. Unfortunately, Ricky is nowhere to be found, only encountering Carlito's men, who insist he leaves Ricky alone as it will impact their business. Ignoring their threats, Chev pulls out his gun, initiating a firefight with them. Amidst the exchange of bullets, Chev discovers Eve inside the factory, realizing she followed him. To ensure Eve's safety, Chev escapes, placing her in the car and drives away. However, as Carlito's men pursue them, Chev's adrenaline decreases again. In a makeshift team effort, Chev handles the driving while Eve playfully drifts the steering wheel. Due to the firefight, Chev sustains a leg injury, prompting him to stop at a hardware store where he hammers nails into his leg. Afterwards, Chev heads to Miles, who agrees to see him. Miles confines Chev, attempting to stabilize his condition and presenting two options: dying peacefully in a good dream or extending his numbness for an hour. Driven by a thirst for vengeance, Chev chooses the latter. He contacts Ricky, proposing a deal: the locket of Ricky's brother in exchange for the antidote. Ricky, furious, agrees to the deal, and they plan to meet at a hotel. On his way, Chev injects himself with the drug to boost his adrenaline. En route to Ricky's location, Carlito's men escort him and confiscate his gun. At the hotel's rooftop, Chev finds Carlito and Ricky surrounded by guards. Chev taunts Ricky, infuriating him, while Carlito plans to inject Chev with the Chinese poison. As they believe Chev is powerless, he surprises them with multiple men appearing and engaging in a gunfight. Amidst the chaos, Carlito's men and Chev's forces clash, and Carlito and Ricky attempt to escape. Ricky stumbles, losing a finger, while Carlito rushes to the helicopter pad. Chev catches up, preventing Carlito's escape. Ricky, appearing from behind, injects Chev with the syringe, momentarily stunning him. Just in time, Chev regains control, clings to the outside of the helicopter, and opens its door. Ricky tries to push him away, but Chev grabs him, initiating a fight while falling from the sky. High on drugs, Chev overpowers Ricky, snapping his neck. Chev's victory is bittersweet as he falls on top of a taxi, breaking all his bones and meeting his demise. In his final moments, he asks for forgiveness and bids farewell, closing his eyes in preparation for the impact. In the final scene, we see him closing his eyes, indicating that he is still alive.